Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you here today. I mentioned this in the email, but so yes, you are invited to be on camera or off camera for this session today. I'm just happy to have you join us. Um, this is the masterclass, How to Implement Global Up at Your Institution. We are joined with people from around the world. I think the majority of the audience today I have encountered maybe at NAFSA or other conferences, or you're coming from the AFS network. So lovely to have you all here today. While we wait for everyone to be able to log in and get started, I'd like to kick us off with a game. So this is Guess the Country. Many of you work in the field of international education. Maybe you feel pretty good at geography, so I did put it on hard mode, but you can put your answers into the chat as we listen to this video together.
Welcome all quiz lovers to Quizpedia with Uncle Albert. Today we have for you Guess the Country on the Map challenge, hard version. Just a warning, it is not going to be easy. There are 30 questions with 10 points each. Let's start and test your geography knowledge. Which country is this? Latvia, Estonia, or Luxembourg? The answer is Estonia. Estonia is a unique tradition called sauna culture. It's a common practice for Estonians to relax and socialize in saunas. What country is this? Morocco, Algeria, or Egypt? The answer is Morocco.
Again.
Morocco is home to the world's oldest university,
Very good.
the University of Al Qarain, founded in 859 AD. Which country is this? Turkey, Armenia, or Georgia? The answer is Georgia.
Nice job.
Georgia is known for its unique alphabet, the Georgian script. There are 33 letters and is one of the world's oldest continuously used writing systems. What country is this? Cuba, Dominican Republic, or the Bahamas? The answer is Dominican Republic.
Nice job.
The Dominican Republic
We'll do
is
one
the
more.
second largest producer of premium cigars in the world. The Dominican Republic is renowned for its high-quality tobacco and cigar craftsmanship. Which country is this? Germany, Belgium, or the Netherlands? The answer is Belgium. Belgium is famous for having more castles per square kilometer than any other country in the world.
All right. Well, obviously we've got a good group on here. If even hard mode, you were doing wonderfully. So, and I think, sometimes we have a stereotype that US Americans are not that good at geography. So I always think it's helpful for me to play games like that to learn more. Well, wonderful to have you all. My name is Molly Stern. I'm the head of academic partnerships here at AFS Intercultural Programs. And I will go over kind of how AFS works and how the Global Up program works. And then we'll talk about, ways that you can think about implementing global competence at your universities, your educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, and so forth. So for those of you who maybe this is your first ever encounter with AFS, I wanted to give a little insight into who we are as an organization and what is Global Up, because sometimes there's a confusion of, are you Global Up or are you AFS? We're AFS, and Global Up programs belong to the AFS organization. So I'm curious if anyone here is an AFS return student. Sometimes we find those out in our field as well, so you can put that in the chat. If you've done an AFS program, it's always wonderful to hear. But the way that AFS started might be interesting to you. So American Field Service, not a term that we use anymore at AFS, but actually started during World War I as ambulance drivers. And so it was volunteer ambulance drivers in World War I and II that picked up the wounded and cared for them. And after World War II, the organization formed as an international exchange program to create more friendships around the world and avoid the horrors and violence of war. So it gives me goosebumps every time I talk about it because I just think it's such an interesting way to, take a experience like being an ambulance driver, somebody who's seeing the hardest parts of, humanity and then wanting to build friendships afterward. So since 1947, there have been exchanges happening all over the world between AFS organizations. So we have 59 AFS organizations in the world that exchange students between each other and with some other program providers now as well. Um, and in 2015, we started to standardize our pre-departure information that we were giving students who were going abroad, and that became known as our Global Competence Certificate. And so since 2015, we have been offering the Global Competence Certificate not only to our AFS network, but we have also started by partnering up with educational institutions such as universities that have adopted this program to prepare students to go abroad and to bring global competence to students that are not going abroad. So after 10 years of offering this, we've a couple numbers up here, but 40,000 learners have participated in an AFS Global Competence Certificate program. We've had over 500 education, higher ed staff and faculty that have been trained as qualified facilitators. Um, Over 125 countries have been represented as learners and facilitators. So that's kind of an interesting and unique aspect to this program as well. Um, and we'll talk more about some of the research and studies that have shown its effectiveness as we go on as well. So, what does it mean to global up? Um, Maybe it's something you're kind of imagining like skill up or leveling up, bringing your experiences and amplifying kind of the skills that you've acquired through those. But essentially, all of our versions have this goal of empowering students, staff, and faculty with tangible global skills that are essential to live, learn, work, and make a positive social impact in diverse settings. And those settings could be on campus, at work, or just in your local community and around the world. So we've been seeing lately that these skills are actually like the need for these skills are increasing. And so in Forbes, there was this great article about mastering the most valuable skills of 2026. And I'll just read this to you. So it says, you cannot adapt to this changing landscape without professional skills like adaptability, critical thinking, and problem solving. Your team will not be effective in implementing AI without those human traits like teamwork, creativity, work ethic, and more. AI is only as effective as our human skills. But that's not the only reason these skills are so sought after by employers. There's a strong demand for soft skills because they are harder to teach. And that comes from Chris Graham, the Executive Vice President of Workforce and Community Education at National University. Soft skills are more innate. Skills such as leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, teamwork, adaptability, and ambition are harder to instill through traditional training methods. Um, and so we're excited to be showing you, one option for how to get at those skills with this program too. So the Global Up program, it does ask that learners follow a different path, incorporating core global competencies that allow them over time to learn to interact more effectively and appropriately with culturally different others. And that comes from Dr. Michael Vandenberg, who is well-known intercultural expert and author in the field of international education. So how did we kind of go about, building this program and what was the research that went into it? The Georgetown Consortium project that came out in 2009 about interventions for student learning abroad really helped our field in breaking down some commonly held myths about what develops global competence. So we used to think that if you gave people cultural specific orientation, like this is how, if you're going to travel to Japan, this is how you should enter someone's home. Here's the greetings, here's common business practices. that proved to not be something that actually helps somebody navigate ambiguous situations, right? It kind of can also make someone default to stereotypes if that's done, and that's the only way that we're intervening in their learning. Immersion program, so just taking someone from their cultural context and putting them in a very different cultural context, they'll develop skills. They might develop some skills, but without that guided reflection piece, they aren't necessarily going to make the gains in their global competence. And another commonly held myth, especially when I entered the field like nearly 20 years ago now, was the only study abroad programs that really count are a semester or a year-long program. And that has been broken as a myth as well, or been, um, seen as a myth now, because we are seeing gains for students who are not even studying abroad as long as they're doing a guided, facilitated learning with reflection before, during, and after either an experiential learning activity or experience or a study abroad experience as well. So it's really interesting to look at those. Our approach with how we, are incorporating different learning styles is to use Kolb's learning cycle. So we have that experiential learning cycle woven in through various parts of our program, the modules that I'll talk about in a minute, the live sessions, um, and kind of the whole experience as itself, doing one big circle with this occurring in mini circles throughout all of the modules and live sessions as well. Um, we do have peer learning as another piece of our approach, which means those students and faculty and staff that are going through this, they can see other people's comments in our forum discussion. And then when they're in a live dialogue session, they're also hearing from others while reflecting on their own experiences. And that just sort of, elevating their reflective opportunities as well. It is modular and developmental, so it does get progressively more nuanced, more layered, and challenging as people are progressing through this program. So here's a question of kind of, when you're thinking about bringing global competence, what is the internationalization challenge that maybe you're addressing? Are you thinking about outbound mobility? Are you finding ways to create a more inclusive campus for inbound students? Um, are you helping to just develop intercultural programs and opportunities at your campus? Virtual exchange or COIL. Maybe you're thinking about a faculty and staff development, globalizing disciplines, could be something of a specialty program, or, strengthening international research opportunities and partnerships. So we have had experience with all of these. And it's kind of neat to have a program that is so flexible. It can address all of these different needs. And I'll give you kind of a showcase in how it does that. So there are 6 versions, and once somebody has gone through one of the versions, we believe you've completed the Global Up program. So there would not be necessarily a need to go through the Global Up abroad as a student and then go through it at home, but we have it for different audiences so that it speaks to their experience that they're having. So we have an abroad, an at home, and at work for professional development. We have a version for educators in the K through 12 space. We have a teen version that supports students 14 to 17-year-olds, and we have an inbound version that supports international students who are coming to campus and wanting to, find belonging and find ways to integrate with students that are on their campus as well. All of those versions follow our learning framework, which again comes from Dr. Michael Vanderberg, of how we actually develop intercultural competence in learners. So you would note, in our earlier modules and our earlier conversations in those dialogue sessions, we really are focusing on deepening self-awareness. So who am I? How do I make sense of the world? What are the lenses in which I see the world? And just getting a good foundation in your self-awareness. The second piece is deepening your awareness now of others and how they make meaning in the world. So I know more about myself now when I look at my colleagues or I look at the students I'm in a group with. What's similar? What's different? And kind of how does that help me better understand myself and them through that process? The third piece might be a little surprising, but it's about being able to manage an emotional response in a context that's new, surprising, or challenging. So when we're doing qualified facilitator training, we actually ask our trainees to come up with examples of something that was frustrating, and now in hindsight, they can kind of unpack the cultural aspects that were at play with the person that they were maybe in conflict with or having a frustrating experience with. And it really is about this piece of being able to kind of step back and get into a mode where you can observe what might be going on there. Um, Also learning more about yourself. What is this thing that is kind of like someone start a meeting late and now you're realizing in my culture, like punctuality is something that is oftentimes considered valued. Um, or maybe it's direct communication or indirect communication. Maybe that person was too, you know, forward and didn't, consider the relationship first. So that's kind of what we're talking about with that manage the emotional response of just being able to think about what else could be going on there. And then the fourth piece is now I know more about myself, I know more about others, I'm practicing my emotional response. When might I shift my behavior and how would I do that in when I find myself navigating these cultural differences? So it takes a lot to get to that fourth piece, and this is a developmental tool. So you might have someone who enters into our program, and because it is developmental, we might be getting to number one and two. And later, as they continue their learning, might address number three and four. But those are those learning framework pillars. So the Global Up program, our format and delivery, we have modules and forums. We have reflective journaling. So every participant gets a participant manual that has journaling prompts included in there. And then we have those live dialogue sessions that are woven into the program. And those are run by someone who's been trained to be a qualified facilitator. So how does this look in practice? If you're thinking about the Global Up Abroad to complement anything from a 2-week program to a full year program, the snapshot of what a pre-departure would be. So students, before they would even go, would complete modules 1 through 8 of, uncovering their learning styles, understanding more about their cultural identity, what does it mean to suspend judgment, thinking about cultural values, again, with that self-awareness, awareness of others, looking at communication styles, uncovering what their communication style is, maybe what the context they're going to, what's a common communication style in that context, and then preparing to leave their comfort zone. So kind of getting them in this mindset of curiosity, more self-awareness before they would even leave on their trip. Um, then they would stop and have their first facilitated dialogue session. And this could be, again, this could be you if you're interested in running those. It could be a faculty member that's leading them on a faculty-led program. It could be, um, you know, anyone at your university that wants to do this type of work with students. It can also be AFS's role to fulfill that. And that's something we'll talk about more as well. So they would go on their program, they'd get started, and then there would be modules that support them during their experience. So they'd talk about settling into a new environment, recognizing spiritual diversity, navigating conflict, and stop and have a reflection live dialogue session. Then they would go through seeing beyond us versus them, talking about polarization, recognizing inequality, understanding power and privilege, and how to apply this learning real time to the experience that they're having, and have another dialogue session. So those dialogue sessions are always looking back at the modules that they just went through. There's prompts, there's a slide deck, and they're usually about 90 minutes. So they can be run online or in person. So just depends on your preference, but that's how those would play out. This can also be shortened. So if you're thinking, wow, this is a lot for a 2-week program, it can be shortened down to nine modules is, our smallest. So just in case that's running through your mind as well. In the after, as students either are in their final days of their program, or if it's possible to have them complete modules after they've returned home. We have modules about kind of what happens now that you've returned home, of like reverse culture shock, reflecting on the experience, taking action, which is how do you continue this learning? We know you don't just arrive at being a globally competent person. It's an exercise or a muscle that you want to, continue to develop and not just kind of go back to normal. So there's also this module called Skilling Up for the Future, which is all about kind of what we were talking about with the Forbes magazine article. How do you talk about the experience you've had, both with the Global Competence Certificate, but also with this study abroad program that enhances your ability to talk to prospective employers, add it to your resume, talk about what you gained from the experience that could really translate into critical job skills. So, those are the modules. There's a final session of just reflecting on the experience as a whole. And then you can see this student here. They took a screenshot with their cohort, and now they have the Global Competence Certificate Credly badge. So upon completion, they do get a Credly badge that can be sent right onto their LinkedIn profile. It also comes as a PDF that they can download and include in, a portfolio or their resume. Um, and it's a lovely feature that prospective employers can actually click on that credential and see what the skills developed throughout the program were. So it's a nice way to recognize their hard work. For those who are interested in, fulfilling that role of a qualified facilitator, we do offer training every other month for facilitators. And so with a facilitator training program, there's a live session where we go over how does this whole program work, all the different versions. We have a manual that you receive access to, all the curriculum for the live sessions. I mentioned there's a slide deck for facilitated dialogue session 1, and with all the slides and the prompts included in the notes of those slides as well. After you've received your qualified facilitator badge, we invite you to join our LinkedIn group where we have facilitators from all over the world, over 500, where you can do resource sharing, connecting, and have further dialogue between facilitators in there as well. So we'll try this out. I have a question for you if you want to have the experiential learning experience here. Look around your area, or maybe it's something you're wearing, and think about a cultural object that you have. Okay. So find something near you or something that you're wearing that could be a cultural symbol. I'll give you an example too. And reflect, how does this object represent your cultural identity? What might someone think when they see this item? And Carol, I'll ask if you could make 4 breakout rooms for this.
Okay.
If you don't want to come off mute or on camera, that's okay. You can put your answer into the chat in your breakout room. But here's my example to start. So I have these funny little feeling sticks that have an emotion on them. And this is right by my desk. And I'm thinking about the culture that this represents. And this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I would say I'm in motherhood, and I have like this motherhood culture going on in addition to being a US American Minnesotan. Um, and this is near my desk. And if somebody saw this, they might be like, is she a therapist or what is that? But no, I just have a 5-year-old that's often, in the home as well. And this is a great way to talk about the feelings that we have when they come up and identify those emotions. So something we're always working on here. Um, so yeah, find something you're wearing or something that's near your desk, and you can share it in your small group. And I'll give you just 5 minutes for this activity. And again, permission, if you can't come off mute, you can use the chat for this. Okay. And Carol, are breakout rooms ready?
Yes, opening them now.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Pablo, do you want to go to a breakout room?
No, that's okay. Got it. Thank you.
Oh, I did. There we go. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. I'm always curious if that was enough time for you to be able to share your object. Okay, good. See no thumbs up. Well, wonderful. I'm hoping you got to hear some interesting stories or learn something new about, somebody in our space today. And this was just meant to be an example of kind of a little glimpse into what these dialogue sessions might involve. And so just being able to connect with others, hear about their cultural, identity and reflect on yours as well. So um, if we're talking about Kolb's learning cycle, one way that we could complete our circle is by considering continuing this practice with your own curiosity by noting objects around your workplace or your community and ask people in your area about them. Could even be when you're going down to the corner shop and you see something interesting, by the cash register. So always an opportunity to find out more about the others that, are in our communities by practicing global competence. So there we go. How might this work without a study abroad component? So for the first part of our session today, we've really focused on how this complements an experience abroad, but we have had our Global Up at Home and non-mobility versions in place since 2020. And still our research is showing that it really does support with developing self-awareness, broadening perspectives, and building stronger teams. So a snapshot of how the Global Up at Home program works, and mostly this is, again, more for like an undergraduate, 18-year-old and older audience. The modules are arranged in inward, so who am I? Outward, what do I notice about the world around me? And again, with looking forward. There are 4 facilitated dialogue sessions included as part of this program. The modules estimate to take 10 to 15 hours total. And then depends on how much you spend on those facilitated dialogue sessions. Again, they're typically designed for 90 minutes. So it could be up to 15 to 20 hours total. The at work version, so for those who are interested in utilizing this for professional development, it could be for staff or faculty. There are 3 facilitated dialogue sessions that are part of this program. It's shortened down to 17 modules. And this has been a really interesting, project that a lot of universities have taken on as like they go through it as a group and learn more about each other as teammates, or people across different fields have gone through this to be able to connect with their students more effectively at universities across the world. So that's really awesome to see. Who has been using this? I was wanting to give just a couple examples of how this shows up in practice. So we have over 100 university partners that have used this in various ways. And so here's a snapshot of the universities that we've had licensing agreements with that have used it. And I'll focus on a couple of stories here. So Augsburg University, it's one of our longest standing partnerships. They utilize the Global Up Abroad program with those students who are studying abroad from the United States going into Mexico, Central America, South America. And they've actually had students that are in those countries going through it along with students coming from the US. So that's been interesting to see how it can bridge for those students that are, both in the host country and the visiting. A completely different example is with the Hormel Institute that does cancer research. They have expert cancer researchers that are coming to the University of Minnesota Hormel Institute, sometimes for a year or two to be supporting the research on, preventing cancer or curing, different aspects. And so that has been part of their HR onboarding is bringing those visiting researchers through a shortened version of the Global Up at Work to prepare them for working with others from all over the world. So that's been a great partnership as well. Ohio State University, we are primarily working with their engineering department. And so one of the faculty members there in the engineering capstone course that he teaches, he has all of those students go through Global Up at Home with the idea that this will prepare them for considering some of the social aspects to the engineering challenges that they will face in their careers. So we're finding a lot of interest from engineering faculty for these types of skills. So that could be something to explore in your context as well. Fox Valley Community College, we have 3 faculty members that are using this program. So we started with the Intercultural Relations course. That seems like a really obvious fit there. And then word got out that this was a program and that others could use. And we've been supporting their faculty-led study abroad programs, as well as supply chain courses. And that was kind of new for me. I come from the College of Liberal Arts and the Humanities. And when I step back and think about it, you're like, supply chain, that's interesting. But it makes sense when you're trying to, collaborate, coordinate, move things across borders. You're going to be working with people from all over the world. And so understanding those cultural nuances could really be effective for that type of work. Healthcare, we have a healthcare organization, so completely outside of higher ed space, that they have adopted our program. They've customized it to their needs, and they are, hoping this equips providers, healthcare providers, with skills for working with patients from all over the world. So that's been interesting use and work to be able to consult with them and collaborate with them to make sure it's hitting the mark for their providers. 2 more examples. We have the Institute for Global Learning. They're using this and bringing students from different schools across the United States to have both a teen experience in the Global Up Teen, and they're also offering it for teachers who want to connect with teachers and go through this together, but in a virtual space. And finally, Mountbatten, they've been running internship programs for over 40 years with students primarily coming from Scotland, Ireland, the UK, and are placed with internships in New York City. And I've had the privilege of actually facilitating their students or their participants through this program. And it's so fun to see what kind of surprises they have upon starting their internship in New York, comparing it to their home culture, comparing it to workplace culture, and just helping them kind of develop these skills as they're early in their careers. So those are just a couple examples. We have 2 testimonials. So from Brunel University, Dr. Mary Johnson, she wrote to us that Global Up wasn't just about appreciating our different cultures. It brought us together as a team. Going through this program with colleagues that I worked with but didn't necessarily see daily fostered a real sense of connection. We saw each other as people first, not just staff or faculty positions. And then she went on to facilitate for students as part of a course at Brunel as well. And she says, facilitating for the first time, I gained immense respect for this role. It takes courage to open up discussions, and I learned that vulnerability is key. Sharing my own experiences, even if it meant risking judgment, encouraged others to do the same, and it was a powerful lesson in building trust and understanding. Dr. Nicole Warheim, who's the Assistant Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and a professor of sociology at Central Oklahoma, she she's actually done research on the IDI, equipping students with the Intercultural Development Inventory before and after. And she says here, we have used Global Up programs since 2021. Not only can we quantitatively show improvements with IDI scores, but we can also qualitatively discuss transformation in perspectives and interactions based on the student reflection papers. The practical skills-based learning provides real-world examples for students. Wonderful. So for time's sake, I'll skip this next part, but how this can look at your institution or your organization as well. So we sometimes have the privilege of being able to award the certificates in person. And so this is just a snapshot. We had climate entrepreneurs who are part of our AFS Youth Assembly gather in New York, and we were able to award their certificates in person. So that was a really fun experience. And then sometimes it's a closing live session virtually with, like I mentioned, the interns that we have in the Mountbatten program in New York City. So every organization can kind of choose how ceremonial they make their certificate and award at the end. And it can also be 100% virtual. So many of our partners have talked about, what's important when they're thinking about a global competence curriculum. And some of them have noted like it has to be easy to use. It can't be that it has to be run by experts, scalable. It can be, something that's flexible. So engineering could find a use for it. Humanities could also find a use for it, education, and so on. Research-based, we've heard, is really important, and having it have global perspective as well. So all of the modules include these animated videos, and with examples of these like cultural tensions or conflicts that come into play between these animated characters. Those characters were developed with a lot of intentionality to reflect the communities where this is being used. So you'll see really diverse characters from all over the world and different religions as well. And then they have these prompts at the end of, now you just watched a 3-minute video on active listening. How many types of listeners have you experienced? Which type of these listening habits are you most likely to fall into? And then you would see comments from all over the world below that video. We also have really been taking into consideration how we develop these learners and wanting it to be effective. So if you're really familiar with the intercultural development continuum, you'll probably see like where we're kind of pushing for people to shift into that next mindset. If this is a new model for you, it's worth kind of getting to know, especially if you are interested in intercultural development, of just how this continuum exists, what are the stages, and how do we develop, beyond our current mindset into the next one. So there's denial, polarization, minimization, acceptance, and adaptation being kind of on the far side of having adopted an intercultural mindset. And all of these learning goals with those 4 pillars are aiming to kind of move people through those IDI stages as well. We do have a lot of research that institutions have either chosen to do on their students on their own, but we had a wonderful partnership with Purdue University when we were first starting out, where they did run a study where students had a semester abroad experience, and they had a control group. Those students received no intervention at all. They had one-to-one mentoring group. So those students actually had a coach who was assigned to them as an individual. And then they ran it with the Global Competence Certificate. And so we kind of found we are in a sweet spot, right? So the one-to-one mentoring, of course, that's an impressive change, but that is not sustainable for, at least it wasn't at Purdue. And having a group mentoring still showed a wonderful result. And their second study actually had a better result where 13 points were gained by the IDI. So again, this is one way we've kind of assessed our program. It's another way you could assess your own programs that you're building or other tools you're using is by doing an IDI before and after. It's not woven in automatically to our program, but it is something some universities choose to have as part of this. How much time is needed? I think we've touched on this a little bit, but 7 to 9 hours is estimated for the modules, and the dialogue sessions about 6 to 8 hours. And then you can draw this out if you need to hit a minimum amount of hours to give a credit for the course. Like you could, assign some of those journaling and reflection pieces that are in the manual, make it as long or as short as you'd like. Customization is available. And so how this looks for a university or institution that's thinking about this, we can white brand. And so it feels like a continuation of the learning for your students. I'd say about half of our university partners choose this pathway where they customize it. It's a one-time fee. And then it feels more like a familiar or continued learning experience. So here's another model with Cultural Vistas, and that was with the Institute for Global Learning. So that is possible as well. And the steps for implementing this, typically people will sign up to have a one-to-one with me, and we'll talk about your context, how this could support your learners. We can talk about all of the Global Up package details, what makes sense in terms of your university, number of learner accounts, number of facilitator training accounts, and so on. Then we would identify your first cohort of learners. You'd send us a list of their names and emails. We'd enroll them, move forward after kind of figuring out that pathway of, are you choosing to facilitate or is AFS facilitating, and so on. And so many of our university partners are repeat year after year. Maybe it's part of a course or a particular study abroad program or for incoming students. And so that's how our partnerships have worked over the past 10 years. So there's a QR code if you'd like to choose a time to sign up with me one-to-one. You don't have to. You can also send me an email. And then we also have a summer deal as part of our NAFSA 2026. So at NAFSA, we showcase this deal, and it's still running through August 31st, that we're offering 26% off for the year 2026 for institutions that are purchasing 100 learner accounts as part of their university package. So we can also discuss that in our one-to-one. And that brings me to the end. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one question, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I was wondering whether you have a program for people who can be facilitators, especially in the business world, for people who are having, some challenges with overseas assignments and so forth. So would that be of something that you offer?
Yes, we could definitely chat that through. We have some of our partners include consultants, so people who are, running their own businesses but want to bring a cohort of learners through this as part of their offerings. And so, yes, and we do offer, virtual training. And again, this can be delivered 100% virtually. It can also be delivered all in person beyond the modules. So those live sessions as well. So yes.
So what kind of training is required for that as far as your organization you provide for the facilitators?
The
The training.
facilitator training aspects include going through one version of the Global Up program. So Global Up at home or Global Up abroad, depending on who you think you might facilitate for next. And then the training program is a 2-hour live webinar training that we run every other month. And those are posted on our website. We do require an active licensing agreement in order to be a part of our training, but we could talk that through about kind of what you're thinking and who you'd be, thinking about bringing through a cohort.
I'd like to talk more about it,
Okay,
so I don't want to take your
wonderful.
time now.
Well, yes, I'm happy to chat through, brainstorm. I think sometimes, if you sign up for a one-to-one, it doesn't guarantee that you're ready to take the plunge yet, and that's totally fine. I like to be in the early stages of exploring and brainstorming together. So if you'd like to do that with me, you can use that QR code, or you can send me an email. And thank you all so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to being in contact. Thank you.